Hey everybody, my name is Tyler Bell. Welcome inside the studio for another horror review. Today we are talking about the 2015 novel A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul G. Tremblay. Head Full of Ghosts is a exorcism story. It follows the mental decline of a young girl. She's a teenager, which is pretty basic for this genre type of story. Her name is Marjorie Barrett. Her younger sister, Meredith, or Mary Barrett, narrates the story. The story is framed basically as a conversation that Mary is having with a successful writer named Rachel in the future. More than 12 years, I believe, after the events of most of the inside of the book. And, you know, we're going to have to get into spoilers to talk about this just because the plot is so thin, not necessarily in a bad way, but there's really just not that much to talk about with this book. Other people might disagree with me, but stick with me for this. The story basically starts in the aftermath of Mary's father being laid off from a toy factory in their New Hampshire, or not New Hampshire, but somewhere in New England. I think they're actually in Massachusetts. It doesn't matter. I don't care about New England. I've been there so many times for so many horror stories, and I've never seen any significant difference between Rhode Island, Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, Delaware, upstate New York, which is not New York City, and that entire region in general. Pennsylvania. Did I get everyone? I don't technically like Virginia as part of New England, but it doesn't really feel like it. All the states that got cut off during the Civil War kind of actually do have their own specific feel to it. That feel is quite frankly most often racism, but it's different. Anyway, they're New Englanders. Who gives a shit? As the story goes on, we find out that the economic impact of the father, Mr. Barrett, losing his job. I can't really remember his actual name. It's not mentioned fairly often during it. The mother's name is, I don't even think, mentioned till the end because it is narrated from the perspective of a child. It's mostly mom and dad, and people that are addressing them are talking to them as Mr. and Mrs. Barrett. So Mr. Barrett, as far as I'm concerned, if you want me to remember the name, hey, use it more often. But the father sort of has a mental decline of sorts into religious, not necessarily fanaticism, but just general faith, religious belief. There is nothing about the way that he acts that I consider to be anything out of the ordinary with people that start turning to religion after a crisis. I know that might not be the case for many people that read this book, but having been in the military and seen people just suddenly pick up Christianity, it's actually a fairly accurate portrayal of just kind of what that's like. He starts leaning real heavy on the Bible, real heavy on faith. His wife, who is sort of a pragmatic pseudo-atheist of sorts, more of a I don't do this atheist, as opposed to an actual like Dawkins-esque, this is all fucking stupid. She just kind of raises the general questions against it and is a little upset when dad starts bringing God around the kids, especially considering as Marjorie sort of slips deeper and deeper into her unwellness. It doesn't seem to be fixing the problem, but rather exacerbating it, which is kind of the functional plot and feel of the novel. The relationship between religion, the relationship between economic strain, and mental health, both on the case of Marjorie, who is our exorcism victim, or possession victim / exorcism victim throughout the story, and her relationship with her parents, and ultimately with the church, and the main conceit of the novel, which is that a reality television crew moves into their house to film the exorcism, and the family's sort of psychological state and day-to-day lives leading up to it, which is probably the most modern-y type thing that they've done. It's probably why this novel sticks out in a lot of people's heads. It didn't do much for me. I don't watch reality television show. I know that it's exploitative. I don't care. I don't give a shit what reality TV show does to the lives of the people that are involved in it. It is generally something that you have to sign a contract to get involved with. It's even when this is filmed, it's not, these people aren't at the advent of reality TV. They are not at the advent of fame. People are using the internet at this at the period when this is set. There's a lot of references to SpongeBob and teenagers with easy access to internet and laptops. So I'm gonna guess that it's because I can't really remember offhand if the specific date is mentioned. The only thing that I can remember that has a date on it is the blog posts, which I will get to, and that's done in the traditional Capcom 20XX. So I guess it is, at least in this millennium. Obviously, SpongeBob is mentioned, so that's only 13 years of time to choose from. I think actually 20 years now. I think SpongeBob's been running almost as long as the fucking Simpsons by this point. But I digress. It's exploitation by a reality TV show is boring to me. It adds nothing really on top of the soup of shows that are of just media in general that are exorcism media. And let me hop into that before I talk too much more about the show. There are two extremes in every exorcism movie that every exorcism movie lays between. It's real, the possession is real, and the possession is not real. The best exorcism movies, as good as exorcism movies and media can ever be, hover somewhere in between the two, just so that they can give you a little bit of a, hey, when they're freezing this girl and making her super cold, is it really helping? Is it not? Who knows? And that's sort of the major conceit of this is it, isn't it crazy sort of motive that's going through. I think it doesn't do it very well. By the end of the book, I will say before I get into, I'm going to shred this thing a little bit. And I know people have a very, very, very strong love for this book. Don't think that any of the things that I'm about to bring up make the book bad. I actually enjoyed it ultimately. But so the thing with Marjorie is that she probably has some sort of borderline personality disorder, delusions, schizophrenia, something. It's never really gone into. It is said that she takes antipsychotics. I didn't bother doing the research into the types of antipsychotics that she's taken. I could have honestly asked one of my friends who's a psychiatrist, and she probably would have told me, but that's something that should be kind of left with the book. Maybe, I'm not sure. As the plot goes on, there is the sense, or actually the discussion of taking her away from traditional medicine and having her go to a more faith-based approach. The doctor that she's taken to after her normal doctor is kind of just a peon of the Catholic Church. It's implied that there's some Opus Dei Jesuit stuff happening. Okay, fine. I was raised Catholic. None of this is familiar to me. And I was raised like Catholic, like Greater Archdiocese of Cincinnati. I was a fucking altar boy. That's how Catholic I was coming up. None of this is familiar. None of this is even remotely common in the church, as far as I know. I'm an atheist now, but I still have family inside the church. And in general, Catholicism is not like this. And I mean very much in general, even amongst the more faithful people, this is strange. This is sort of, I think, because you have to have, in exorcism stories, you have to have Catholics because they're the only people that have all of the glitz and glamour. Catholicism is the sexiest of the horror genre religions because, big costumes and gold ornamentation, giant fucking dead bodies with wounds crucified on the walls of your church. I mean, it's great. Honestly, if you've never been to a Catholic church, I can imagine it being pretty fire because I can even remember I was coming up Holy Family Church in Cincinnati, West or East Price Hill. That's the church that I did all of my major stuff in when I was a kid growing up. My actual church was St. Jude's in Green Township. And, but I remember Holy Family, man, we had to go there for almost everything. And it's giant 6-7 story ceiling. I can't even tell you how tall it is. It's at least 120 some odd feet off the ground, or at least it feels like that. And just emblazoned with, martyrs. it's all martyred saints. So you got Saint Sebastian all hemmed up with arrows and shit in his chest. I could see how, the Catholic Church is definitely going to be your go-to for that. But in general, the religious fervor that you want it's not that much of a Catholic thing. There's probably people doing illegal exorcisms and stupid shit like that, but no, man, Catholicism's been on the decline for years. In general, so there's a thing in the book where it's suggested that the reality TV show is going to drive more people to Catholic Church. Not going to happen. Most of the decline in the Catholic Church right now is because of all the kid fucking, and you're not going to really do that. In general, what most churches are doing right now is trying to move toward a more charismatic mass, or charismatic mass is what they call it, and that's to apply in general to the Latino community that's moving in greater numbers to a lot of the working class neighborhoods where these large churches are. I'm not going to say that I know everything about the Catholic Church because I'm highly uninvested in them these days. But in general, that sort of thing where you have the cameras and stuff and Catholic priests, that's just so hilariously ridiculous to me. Just knowing what I know about that, just about that community and how weird it would be is funny to me. Now, if you want to do that with Protestants, and some of these big box Mick churches that are everywhere, I could fucking guarantee you they're trying to do shit like that. I'm actually surprised that it doesn't happen more often, but I couldn't really see the Catholics doing it. I really couldn't see the Catholics condoning it, just because of how bad the view of them in general has been for years now. But I'm getting a little too deep. It's not much of a discussion of the book anymore at this point. I'm sorry, but it's just one of the things that sticks out to me as being odd and almost kind of forced in the narrative. And it's things like that and other stuff that kind of just leaves me feeling like the book's not very fleshed out. I read it in a day. It could have been longer. I was never that invested in Meredith or Marjorie as characters. I didn't really care that much about them. To keep Marjorie as a mysterious, enigmatic, is she, isn't she kind of possessed person, once the possession starts, you don't get a lot of good character interaction between her and her sister. A lot of it's creepy stuff. And the creepy stuff is great. Let me just say that. All of the good, creepy shit in this book is good and creepy, and I fucking loved it. I would have stopped reading at certain points, honestly, if the beats, the horror beats, didn't hit when they did. And when they did hit, they were very good. Most of them are never gone back to, which is something I don't like about it, especially considering the conceit that there is a reality TV show filming this. Something is filmed that should be very real, or it's at least on film, and it's never discussed again, whether or not it's possible, whether or not it's faked by the film crew. And it's not one of those mysteries that's like, ooh, I like that was never gone into. I like how leaving it up to my imagination. It's kind of like, no, that should be explained, especially considering the fact that the worst part of this book is how much it tries to fucking explain itself. It's so irritating. There are 2 framing devices for this novel that literally needs no framing devices. The best part of this film, or of this book, start to finish, is Meredith. Mary's, as an 8-year-old, talking back about this is fine. her having discussions with the book author in the future is kind of a pointless device. It's never really used in the greater context of the story as more than a chorus. It's literally a time for, basically they didn't have another character for Mary to bounce her ideas off of. So this woman was put into the book for Mary to bounce her ideas off of. That's her entire point in the narrative. Nothing happens to her. She doesn't affect the character arc of Mary at all. She's literally just a conversation point, which is, you know what? It's the same device that they use in John dies at the end, but that one's done better. And then for no reason, there is a second framing device that's put in that is fucking garbage. And it is so bad, I literally almost stopped reading the book right away at the beginning. But I forced myself because my fans that I have and the people in the Horror and Light Club were like, you have to read this. You have to read it. So I forced myself through, and I'm glad I did. Because the overarching narrative is so good. It's good enough that I actually will read more Paul G. Tremblay. But please, for the love of God, I hope he never does this stupid shit again. So the second one is a blog, a badly written, I think intentionally, mommy blog type thing. I don't know. I don't want to be disparaging the mommy bloggers out there. This just sounded like that to me. I have friends, because I am in my early 30s, that have started doing these. I mean, not friends, Facebook friends, i.e., women I went to high school with who are now doing these, and occasionally I read them, and they read like this. It is grating. It is irritating. It is full of pop culture references. It's that irritating, I don't know, John Green, I guess, does this shit, and other people do it. I haven't read any John Green stuff. I just associate his existence with this because he's constantly propping up writers who do it. The guy who wrote that book about video games that's clearly never played a video game, that guy, it's that kind of shit where you just reference stuff over and over again. Like, hey, look at me. I understand the source material. And that's how you know I'm smart enough to, I've lost the word. It's this word right here. Anyway, it's so grating and bad. And the worst part is it's jarring. It really takes you out of the story. And it's like these training wheels that they put on top of it. Because not only is it referencing all of these things in relationship to the show, The Haunting of the Bear. Actually, it's called The Possession, is the name of the reality show that eventually comes out. And it is the blog is about this show, which apparently only ran 6 episodes. And this blog is running in Fangoria magazine, or for fucking whatever reason. I don't know. I don't read Fangoria blogs. I don't really read Fangoria magazine, but I can't really tell you if anything like that is in there. But if it is, doesn't make me want to read it. It's training wheels. It literally stops the plot mid-step just to fucking explain what you should be understanding about stuff, which actually ruins what the main narrative does well, which is set up is Meredith, or is Marjorie unwell? Is she just schizophrenic? Is she schizophrenic and maybe also has like some sort of witchy powers, which could account for some of the odd stuff that happens? Is none of it real? Is she actually possessed by the devil? No one really knows. You know what I mean? And that's good. That's what I liked about it. And especially that leads into the ending being as well as it is. And I like the fact that there's a confused, horrified 8-year-old trying to make sense of this. Because from an 8-year-old's perspective, all of this could be possible. I feel like that's what the book does well, is leaving your imagination to try to figure out what an 8-year-old is thinking, is seeing, stuff like that. Because there are things that are not explained, and like I say, they should be, because You have a device that explains all the fucking plot points of the fucking book clumsily, stupidly, I might add. It's so frustrating that I literally can't get it out of my mind. The climax of the book happens. It's the transition into part 3, the finale, and it's a great scene. It's all good. It is literally the exorcism. I told you it's an exorcism book. What do you think the climax is going to be? Obviously. And that ends, and it's a great scene. It's really good. It's not the best I've ever seen. I have seen better versions of that. Sorry, but it's good. It's very competent. I was engaged. And then it ends, and it goes to a fucking blog post about the show that breaks down everything that you just read in detail. And it's fucking garbage. It's fucking trash. The thing is it's so separable from the novel that when I give my recommendation for this, I'm going to recommend that you don't read those 3 chapters. They can be, once you see it, they'll all start the same. It's the same intro to the blog. And once you see them, avoid them. Avoid them like the plague. There is nothing to be gained from reading them. They do not alter the plot. They do not affect it. They do not affect the character. They do not elucidate anything within the plot in any way that informs the reader. It's literally, and I will give Paul G. Tremblay, because I haven't read anything else by him, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that his book was short and his editor, whoever she is or he is, didn't understand enough of the plot, or the publisher didn't, and was like, our audiences are too stupid to understand things, so you're going to jam in a bunch of useless, hideous horse shit to explain this basic ass exorcism plot. And you need to do that. We need 3 more chapters or something like that. That had to have happened. And what you get is not good. But if you told me it was something that he wrote with a fucking gun to his head, I would believe it. I don't want to look up the answer, because if it's not that and he actually stood by those chapters, I would hold him in less esteem. It would make the good parts of the book seem like a fluke. I'll put it that way. Okay, that's enough. Sorry, Paul. If you end up watching this and looking at it, I'm sorry. So my ultimate recommendation for this book, my overall grade, is going to be check it out. It's okay. It's a pretty good book. It's not legendary. I don't think that people are going to be reading this way down the line. It doesn't break new ground. It's not as modern as people have tried to tell me it is. It's not a modern retelling of anything. It's just an exorcism story with a reality TV show crew, which is kind of neat. Those 3 horrible chapters are viciously grating. And if I wouldn't have had to have read this for my book club, I would have dropped it at the first blog post, because I could barely make it through it. It's just that bad. But the rest of it is good enough that I'm still going to give it a recommendation. So I don't know how to feel about that necessarily. So let's go to grades. For competency, I would say I would give this about a 6. Man, actually, it's hard. I want to give it like a 4. I want to actually put it into incompetent, but the other parts are so good that I'm really torn. So I will say I will give it a 6, which is just above a 5. 5 being middle. 5 is okay. 6 is actually good. 6 to 8 is good. Okay. 4 to 1 is bad. It's not like it's not a grade scale like you would get in school, where anything over a 6 is passing. Anything over a 5 is passing. So yeah, I would give it a 6 for competence. Whoever in the publishing industry said that was a good idea to jam those blog posts in there, man. You know what? Fuck it. You sold some books. You won a Bram Stoker Awards. Who the fuck am I? I'm nobody. You won it, but in my opinion, dude, barely scraped by. And avoid those things in the future. Enjoyability, also a 6. Yeah, would have been probably an 8, almost a 9, but that fucking blog post, Jesus. The last one is long as shit, by the way, too. It's maybe, I don't know, it might have actually just been 10 pages, but it felt like it was literally almost the last whole third of the book. It's so bad. So a 6. And then the final grade on a scale of 0 to 5, is it a horror? Is it a bit of horror media? I would say a 4. Pretty horror. Pretty horror. Oh, would be a 5 if it wasn't for the fact that it's intentionally says, maybe it's not a possession. If it was an outright possession, if it was full on exorcism, a 5. As it stands, a 4. Overall grade. Hey man, if you don't have anything else to read and you're trying to pick up some authors that aren't Stephen King, my boy Dan Simmons, actually, no, just always default to Dan Simmons. Dan does not let you down. So hey man, Paul G. Tremblay, upper end of mediocre. He's at least as good as people that wrote shit in the 1950s that you never heard of. Check him out. That is so not an endorsement, but I'm sorry. Anyway, at the end of the day, yeah, check it out, man. If you got nothing else to read, check it out. Hey, that's the end of the review. Did you like this book? Have you read it? How would you rate it? Would you put it higher on your list? Would you put it lower? Did I change your mind? Am I completely fucking wrong? Let me know down in the comments. Hey, Tyler, are you any good at writing? Do you have any fucking chops yourself? You talked a lot of shit. Hey, I think I do. I think I'm pretty fucking good at it. How about that? I've got my own horror and dark fiction podcast that I write. I do all the voices for it. It comes out the first Friday of every month. Other videos are in it on this channel. Check them out if you got a second. And hey, come back to this video and be like, hey, how are you going to do my boy Paul Tremblay wrong like that? I read your story without eulogy and it's fucking filth. It's filth and you should be ashamed. Come back and say that to me. I don't mind. If you want to catch up with me on Twitter at WS Fairytales, westsidefairytales.com for merch, for the podcast. Hit me up on Patreon if you want to get access to early episodes of my own real show. And maybe some benefits coming the way down here. And until next time, as always, stay safe out there.